You're listening to the Security Matters podcast. I'm David Puner, a senior editorial manager at CyberArk, the global leader in identity security. Imagine this. You're sitting in your office catching up on the day. Things feel under control. Then your phone buzzes. Not a text, not an email, it's an alert. A certificate just expired. No big deal, right? Except that one little expired machine identity, just a tiny string of code, is the reason your system's trust chain is unraveling. You start to panic. Your web app won't load. Customers are receiving site can't be trusted messages. Your team's already scrambling to identify what expired, where it expired, and who's responsible for fixing it. Meanwhile, attackers, who never sleep, never blink, they're watching. Because when identity breaks down, opportunity opens up. This isn't a hypothetical. It's the everyday reality of modern infrastructure where machine identities outnumber human identities by more than 80 to 1. And the only way to stay resilient is to know what you've got, where it's running, and how fast you can respond when, not if, something goes sideways. Our guest today knows that world of machine identity better than most. Kevin Bocek, SVP of Innovation at CyberArk, has spent years sounding the alarm on machine identity. Today, he joins us to discuss why machine identities are the new frontline of cybersecurity and what every security leader should be doing to prepare. Let's dive in. Kevin Bocek, Senior Vice President of Innovation at CyberArk. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin. Thanks so much for coming on.
David, it's cool to be here. Loving it.
Awesome. Really excited to talk with you. We're going to talk about all things machine identity and machine identity security, and you are the guy to talk to and with about machine identity and machine identity security. So let's start by setting the stage. What are machine identities? And how do they differ from human identities? And what does scope and scale have to do with all of it?
Yeah. So, you know what? Out there on the internet, cloud, enterprise networks, there are really two actors now that matter. There are humans like us, and there are machines. I mean, of all shapes, sizes, forms, everything from cloud instances to Kubernetes clusters, web applications, load balancers, IoT device. And I mean, compared to us, I mean, we're pretty boring. There are only so many customers, only so many members of the workforce that you can gather. But just since we've been talking, David, I just think the thousands of cloud instances that have been created in a data center not far from you or me. So you hit it right on the button, which is the volume, the velocity, and the variety of machine identities makes them so different. The volume, we can create them just in a matter of milliseconds, up, down machines, cloud instances, virtual machines, up and down. The variety, there's not just one type. We have TLS certificates. We've got API keys, access tokens, SSH certificates. We got code signing certificates, SPIFFE IDs. More and more types are growing. So there's that variety. And then again, the velocity, the volume. Humans, we just can't keep up. And so that gives a perfect mix of, first of all, how they're different. And then second of all, machine identities, they live out with the applications, the cloud instances, the IoT devices. You don't have one central directory or one central CyberArk identity to control all the machine identities just in one place. They live out there. So all of that makes them different, unique, and we'll get into some of the challenges. And of course, everyone here has gotten up close and personal with machine identities. If you may not think you already know that, but you have already. So we'll dig into that.
So what would just a very common example of exposure to machine identity be?
Yeah, everyone every day sees it. And right now, if you're watching through a web browser on your laptop, desktop, or even mobile device, it's that padlock that glows in your web browser. And your web browser is a piece of software. It's a machine. It's connecting, of course, to a cloud, a web application, a load balancer. And when that padlock glows, it says, hey, I'm connecting to another machine. It's presenting its identity. The identifier is its URL, and it's been authenticated. We know that, that machine is, at least it's coming from the same host that it says it's coming from. And that's where we get started with machine identities each and every day, whether we're visiting our bank, web shop, an insurer, any place we go on the web with our mobile device, laptops, desktops, we get up close personal with machine identities. And again, there are many, many more that we'll dig into, of course, too.
The big headline around here from our recently released 2025 Identity Security Landscape Study is that machine identities outnumber humans by now more than 80-1. So this is a rapidly growing number, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop growing anytime soon.
And precisely, David, actually, it's 82 times the number of machine identities to human identities. Of course, that's up from a little over 40 just a couple years ago. And already, if we were to sample that again, we probably see that number going up and up as security teams start to get more and more visibility and awareness of some of the challenges that we're going to dig into. Of course, whether that's the attacks that we're seeing, latest Verizon data breach report is out too. We'll talk about that, or the type of outages, the downtime that's occurring from something like when a certificate expires. So all of this is causing us to have more awareness of the growth, the breadth, the scope of everywhere machine identities are being used in the business.
So you've been sounding the alarm on machine identity for years. Why is this moment right now so critical for getting it right?
Every organization, whether business or government, into new territory. First of all, we're headed to require every public TLS certificate that's representing our business or government will have to have a lifetime of 47 days or less in the coming years. Starting next year, starting next March 2026, the march will be on going down to 47 days.
Mm-hmm.
Already, we're over a little over a year, and I know security teams, security ops teams, app teams, they are struggling keeping up, stopping outages. That number goes down to 47 days. That's 6 times or more the number of operations on TLS certificates, a machine identity that we're going to have to be performing each and every year, 6 times. And there are only more and more cloud instances, more and more web apps that are representing businesses or government organizations. That is number one, stopping certificate outages, getting those renewals in place. That's why, this is so important, number one. The second then is breaches.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Recent research shows that it's taking organizations on average over 100 days to detect an attack where the adversary has taken an API key or access token, over 100 days to detect and remediate that. That is 100 days. We've seen attacks, government organizations, modern cloud businesses where while API keys and access tokens are just kind of being hoovered up, vacuumed up by attackers. And those two reasons, certificate outages and attackers getting API keys and access tokens, makes this a critical, critical time.
So I'm glad you brought up the TLS certificates. And tell me if I'm getting this right or not, but TLS certificates are like digital ID cards for websites.
Yeah, machine identities of all types, especially like TLS certificates, they're just like passports. They're passports for machines. Yeah.
They're currently valid for up to 398 days, and we're going down to 47 days by March of 2029, as you've mentioned. So how do you see this change impacting organizations' approach to certificate management, and what steps should security leaders take to prepare for the new standard?
What we find in the average business or government organization is that you have thousands of public TLS certificates. Those are the ones that are representing you out to the world, whether to mobile apps or web browsers or API clients. Of course, internally, you've got even more. But those are just the ones externally. And I don't know, some of you here, the audience, definitely have been involved in requesting, downloading, installing, validating a TLS certificate. On average, Gartner's estimated that takes 4 or more hours per certificate. Okay, now you get that on 1,000 times. Now you multiply that times 6 times or more a year. You can just imagine I know there are many out there in the audience. I mean, the nightmares that this brings and conjures up. I have to say, yes, I used to work no more, but in data center ops, this is really a nightmare for teams.
Well, thank you for reminding us that we should get to know you a little bit here. You came over to CyberArk last year by way of the acquisition of Venafi, and you've been in the cybersecurity world for quite some time before your time with Venafi, of course. How has your philosophical approach to cybersecurity and identity security evolved throughout the years, and how might you be considering identity security differently now than you were just a year ago?
The one thing that I have learned and really taken to heart is that, we always have to remember back there's an adversary, and they're always there. They're watching, and they are looking for the opportunity to attack. And I think that's the thing. No matter, good day, bad day, sunny day, cloudy day, we have to remember that they're there. And I think that is the one thing that I've come to learn. And why are we here in cybersecurity? Is we are here to protect our businesses, our organizations. And it can be tough, again, when we're down, again, trying to get something to work right, 2 a.m., or maybe we got a call, and it is tough, I know, but that is why we're here. And I think that's what makes us so, so special in our roles. So that's first. And I have to say, I've learned that. I mean, I got started loving the technology and the complexity and details. But the thing then I've learned and working with so many like you that makes us special is, we've got the adversary always watching, and it's just down to us to keep us safe. I think second, when it comes to identity, is that it is the frontier. It is that first line, last line of defense. It's that one layer of cyber, which is when it fails, all the other layers of cybersecurity fall down. So often I just have seen when an attacker, say, for example, like Stuxnet, one of the probably the most infamous cyber attacks, what's maybe not known very well is why was it so virulent? Because a machine identity, in this case, code signing, something that authenticated the actual code, was stolen from Taiwan, used to sign the code that then made Stuxnet so virulent. And that's how identity, it showed up as being completely authentic, trusted. So I think that's the second thing, which is identity. And we just see that more and more every day. So that makes us, again, I think our roles then as identity security professionals, so much more exciting. And I think too, richer in terms of what we're learning and keeping up with the adversaries and also the new technologies.
Thank you for that. Am I remembering correctly that you majored in chemistry in college?
I do have a degree in college from the great College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. I have a specialty in analytical chemistry. So if anyone wants to know about a graphite furnace and what you can do with that, just contact me. We'll chat it up.
So how is what your focus now in innovation in cybersecurity and identity security, how is that an extension? I mean, it's probably a bit of a pull, but how is it an extension of your background in chemistry? And then maybe even more importantly, your past to Colonial Williamsburg, how has that helped you evolve into the modern era?
Today, I get to have fun at CyberArk because, yes, my role and title is innovation. So, which is all about exploring bringing hypotheses, new ideas, and then bringing new capabilities back to help our customers. So today we're exploring spaces like workload identity. How do I authenticate something like a virtual machine to a cloud instance? Or agentic AI. How am I going to authenticate an agent as it talks to another agent, but also make sure that we delegate correctly human identities without doing things like impersonation? So going back to, chemistry, I loved it. Analytical chemistry. It was about proving, was this true or not? Could we find ways if we want to describe, hey, was this, say, for example, this artifact taken from this location or not? And could we find a way to prove it? And that's why I loved analytical chemistry. And, I still bring those days of discovery and learning through to today when we're working on innovation and cyber and identity security. And I think, the team will knows that, I love being out there on the edges. You probably wouldn't want me to be your project planner or project manager. That might be pretty dangerous. So keep me on working what's new, not, keeping the lights on just every day.
So then from the sciences to nuance and language, we often hear the term non-human identity, or NHI. Is that just a synonym or an umbrella term for machine identity, or is there a distinction between the two?
はい。日本語で、勉強しました。大学の時勉強しました。So, as I said in Japanese, I studied Japanese in university. For those Japanese speakers, well, I probably said it very, very poorly. But language, of course, words matter, hopefully, as I just demonstrated. And yeah, absolutely. You know what? As we started off earlier, there are humans, and of course, there are non-humans out there. There are business entities. That's a non-human entity. You might have a pet, a dog, a cat. That's a non-human. Of course, machines of all shapes and sizes, workloads, devices, those are also non-humans. And well, who knows? Maybe they're extraterrestrials. But again, separate topic. I don't know. All those could be non-humans. But the non-humans that matter, though, are the machines. So I think that's, what I said, hey, the actors out there that matter on the internet, enterprise networks, clouds, humans and machines, those are the ones that matter. And as I said, Nihongo de, words matter, language matters. And that's where we get precision. If I just talk about non-humans, again, it could be everything from your cat to the business entity, the government entity, to like your AWS Lambda function that's running. So that's why we talk about in specific terms, humans, again, things like workforce, customers, developer, IT identities, and then also machine identities, workloads and devices, and we can go into even subcategories there. So absolutely, humans, machines, it matters. And I encourage everyone to go through that, proof through themselves and understand. And, to the experts, I think have agreed with this. Gartner, Forrester, the two actors that matter are humans and machines. And that will help you to tell the story. I think that's the one thing, too, that's powerful. I will not tell a story in Japanese, I promise.
Oh, you're welcome to. We got nothing but tape here.
Yeah, that could be dangerous. Or auf Deutsch for the German speakers. That could be even, wow. Yeah, I lived in Stuttgart, and my Gernglish, my German English, the special Schwäbisch dialect is even worse than my Japanese. But, it allows us to tell a story to the executive teams, whether that be the CTO, the CIO, the auditors, just allows us to explain, just like we have a human identity for the workforce that allows us to say, who is good or bad, friend or foe, who belongs, who doesn't. Yeah, we've got things like machine identities, like TLS certificates or access tokens, so we know which workloads or cloud instances belong or not. So it's really, really important, especially in storytelling. I encourage everyone to practice it too.
Yeah, as do I. We know how important that is. That's for sure. So then, while still on the subject of precision, how does machine identity precision strengthen zero trust architectures And what's the risk if we get it wrong?
When it comes to zero trust, and well, I won't be offended because I'm not there with you, the audience. So as you go along, you can Google this. So when we think about zero trust and we think about the early architects, so Google, they put together two position pieces. One was called Beyond Corp and the other Beyond Prod. So I now encourage you to Google Beyond Prod, all one word, Beyond Prod, Prod. And that sets forth zero trust. Beyond Corp is that model that we know of human to machine, especially to many of the teams here, the audience. You're working on how do I uniquely identify each and every time the workforce or the IT, the developers, when they come and authenticate to application services, how do I know it's uniquely that? That's that zero trust model of Beyond Corp. Now, there's the other model, Beyond Prod. It's that next step, which is how do I go from machine to machine?
Mm-hmm.
How do I uniquely take zero trust from machine to machine and go dig into Beyond Prod? So just like the principles of zero trust, we're always authenticating. We're never just blindly trusting. And how do we do that? Just like we do in that human to machine model, that Beyond Corp model. Well, that's identity based. So just in the machine world, we're always authenticating then every machine to machine operation. And then, of course, we can apply the right level of privilege controls, right level of authorization, then to say even further what's good or bad, friend or foe. And we do that each and every day. I mean, your developers and your teams, they're building workloads, whether on-prem or out in the cloud, that are using API keys, access tokens, certificates, especially the new types that are using like spiffy certificates. You've got automated batch operations, say, for example, that are using SSH keys or even now SSH certificates that are going to machine, especially if you're using infrastructure automation like Ansible. Talked about TLS certificates, you're using those also to machine. So that's the special part, that philosophy that zero trust brings, which is we're always authenticating. And that requires strong identity security. And we so oftentimes think about the human to machine. All right, that next step beyond is then machine to machine. So, encourage you, precision, take a look at Beyond Prod, and you'll see all the philosophy then applied to machines, and that will help you. I talk to so many security teams. They're now ready to go that next step and apply zero trust principles to machine operations. And why? Because what they're finding is things like access token, API keys are getting exposed. I mentioned that Verizon data breach report that over 100 days from detection to response in the cloud for things like API keys, access tokens, they're finding them out there. Those long-lived static identities, it's just a recipe for the attacker to go and execute and, either expand their attack, start their attack. So if we can get down to where we're uniquely identifying every, say, for example, cloud workload, on-prem to cloud workload, if we're making sure that we've got short-lived identities that are always unique, that is zero trust. That's the Beyond Prod model.
Really interesting. So then what kind of context do security teams need to truly secure machine identities?
Yeah, so really important in understanding machine identities is getting, as you said, David, the discovery and context right. So we have to be able to discover machine identities where they live, because again, there's no one central directory, one central repository. We have to go out across the enterprise, across our different network segments, discover them, not just one type, but we have to get the TLS certificates, the API keys, access tokens, SSH keys, code signing certificates. I have to also do that out to the cloud, in and out of our CECIDs pipelines. And once we get all that data, wow, that could be like a tidal wave. And it's just then like, it might as well just have a spreadsheet. We then need to get the right context. And this is something that CyberArk has really been innovating on, so that we can apply, not only we get the the machine identities coming in, but we then can apply what machines are they working with, what workloads are using those machine identities, and then really importantly, what are the teams? Who are the individuals who are responsible for those machine identities? Because still, here in 2025, humans are still responsible and accountable for securing and maintaining those machine identities. So we need to have that full context. And then we can start to answer the what, where, why. We've got the who, questions about machine identities. Why are they being used? What are they giving access to? Where are they being used? When are they being used? It's all these who, what, when, where, why, who questions, that we've probably already been asking and solving for in the human identity world. Now that's so, so important in the machine identity world, whether, we're getting ready to solve for that 47-day certificate lifetimes, because we got to find out who owns the certificates now that we've discovered, now that we know too that they're on our F5 load balancers or Apache web servers or out there in EC2 instances on, Nginx. Same thing with access tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they being used? When? How many are they being, say, for example, duplicated? What secrets manager, maybe what vaults are they stored in? Maybe a few. So getting to answer all these questions, we then get real intelligence. Then we can take action. Not to mention too, David, is that this is all happening at machine speed. So this is constantly changing. So the idea that, I just discover once and then I'm done, that doesn't apply, because we have to be constantly monitoring and keeping up, because these machines are changing everywhere.
How does this approach change the way CISO should think about visibility and inventory?
Right. So it's not a one time and you're done. It's not a once annual inventory. And then we can apply maybe some policy or maybe two auditors. We have to be keeping up each and every day. A great example I love is, we've seen a number of outages in Microsoft Azure due to expired TLS certificates. And the Azure team has some really good automation to be performing renewals that they built themselves inside of Azure for the Microsoft teams. But what happens though is you get a virtual machine that gets a rollback, or you get some system that's rolled back or updated, and then an old certificate gets put in place, or actually a new one doesn't get moved into production. And then what happens? You get an outage, which means you have to be constantly monitoring. So from a CISO perspective, thinking about machine identities, it's a continuous discovery and context. And the idea of inventory, it's something that I tend to like to guide against thinking of inventory, because it's a bit like in retail, you take inventory at certain times and it tends to give a static connotation. It's always changing, and you have to be able to discover and get context continuously.
You've spoken about the importance of cyber resilience. How does machine identity security contribute to building a more resilient infrastructure?
So the ability to respond then to any type of incident with machine identities is at the core level, just keeping the business operating. Because if you think about it, if something like a TLS certificate expires, which I know everyone here has experienced, you've gone to a website and it says like, this site cannot be trusted. Or you've probably, again, actually, I know from our research, 45% of organizations are having a certificate outage weekly. So that's almost half of the audience are having a certificate outage weekly. So first of all, of course, you'd hope not to be having them, but then how do you respond? Or if you're under attack, say, for example, I mentioned like it takes 100 days to discover and remediate like an access token on average from when it's exposed in the cloud. So being able to instead actually not have those long-term secrets, but also being able to rotate them. That's about resilience. And it's something that's at the core, I think, of cyber resilience. Because if one machine can't authenticate with another, you might have whole systems go down. It's so different than in human. Like, hey, if one member of the workforce can't authenticate, okay, that could be a bad day for that team member. But if you have one machine identity that's expired, or say, for an example, an API key now that's out of an error or hasn't been updated correctly, you have a cascading effect on systems. That then I think just gets to the core of a resilience. And the one thing that I just say too, we're just talking about discovery and context and CISO, that's something I'm doing each and every day so that now I can see, how are we doing? Are we finding more? Are we remediating, automating, securing more? Which then from a resilience perspective gives me a confidence level. If I'm discovering more and I'm now automating more, whether I'm rotating TLS certificates or rekeying things like API keys or access tokens now more often, I know now I've got a much better confidence in our ability to have cyber resilience, which I think that's what the CISO is looking for. So that's something too for teams, the type of reporting that you can give to your CISO and leaders that shows that progression over time. Not just is that, hey, are we doing our jobs and are we keeping it safer, but we're actually delivering a higher level of resilience to the business.
To give a little nod to our 2025 State of Machine Identity Security report, in that report, it found that in the last year, 72% of organizations experienced at least one certificate-related outage, and 50% reported security incidents and breaches related to compromised machine identities. So just piggybacking on your earlier stats there and showing a little state of machine identity security report love there. Folks should definitely check that out for more information. How can CISOs embed resilience thinking into their identity programs from the start rather than treating it as an afterthought?
Again, as we talked about, which is, do we have the intelligence? Do we know and answer the what, where, who, how, why questions? I suspect that security teams can answer many of those when it comes to, say, for example, the workforce or customer identity. So first, it's understanding. Not to say if you go into your CISO and you say, hey, you know what, we just found 5,000 TLS certificates or 1,500 API keys and access tokens that we didn't know about. That's pretty alarming, but we see that each and every day. So first, having that intelligence. Then second, of course, can I do something about it? Do we have the automation, whether it's rekey or reissue, renew? So you put those together, the intelligence and the automation, you're having a huge, huge, huge effect on cyber resilience. And I think those are great principles to bring. And of course, they're measurable. Again, we can measure the intelligence that we're gathering. We can measure then the percent of automation, the mean time to take down and to be able to automate and respond. So all things too that have great measurable results.
While we're on the subject of resilience, I recently heard your notion of an AI kill switch. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, you know what? If we think about AI today, whether large language models or to the emergence of AI agents, they, are going to be doing work, performing transactions across our business. Some of them already are.
Mm-hmm.
There's no power switch. There's no power plug. There's no network plug that if, let's just say, for example, if an AI agent starts to have a bad day or starts to work outside of its training, what are we going to do? In the end, having a kill switch is something that, you know what, if you're a manufacturer, you have a kill switch. If you go down to the petrol forecourt, or as we'd say in America, that's a gas station, you've got a kill switch. You can turn off the petrol or the gasoline flowing. And AI, how do we have a kill switch? It's identity based. That's how.
Okay.
If we're authenticating uniquely each AI agent, then we know what AI agents are out there. We can say, you know what, that's a good one, that's a bad one. It's all identity based. So essentially, identity becomes a kill switch for AI. And I think that's something important for security teams to bring forward as they're looking and building architectures around AI agents. And it's pretty simple, too. I mean, I can tell that story to a CEO, to a CISO, to a CTO, and whatever your business, you're going to get that. And I think, again, that's a great way that we can share those stories to non-cyber leaders and they get it.
Yeah. So it is feasible.
absolutely feasible, so long as we're building in it. Now, one of the things that I always, really coaching security and identity teams on, we can learn from what we've experienced with RPA, with bots. And with RPA and bots, if you remember back to I don't know, say 2015, 16, 17, I mean, the business rushed rapid adoption of RPA. And, I think as security professionals, identity professionals, what did we do? We had essentially impersonation to really quickly be able to at least give some type of identity to those bots, but it was impersonation. We're applying human identity now to a machine. And even I know some security teams would love to take back, they were putting those same bots, they were actually maybe giving them the same human identities or maybe placing them into groups alongside other human identities. And so we need to learn from impersonation. And I think that's something that we'd want to have a do-over. And now with AI agents coming along, we can get that right. So we can give AI agents unique and universal identities so that they can do their work. But again, applying zero trust principles, we're always authenticating. And then we got that kill switch and say, yep, you know what? I'm going to revoke that certificate. I'm not allow that agent to authenticate anymore.
In one of your recent blogs, you describe agentic AI as digital coworkers with admin's rights and zero chill. So what makes them such a singular challenge for identity and access management?
They're machines. They're working at machine speed. It's different, again, than like a customer or a member of our workforce. And even when we see the adversary trying to do account takeovers, we get great signals and we can understand. But machines, though, operate at a different speed and scale. Again, scale. AI agents won't just be one of them. There'll be many of them possibly performing the same type of task, work. And then it gets back to the variety. There'll be many types of AI agents. So I think that will challenge us as identity and security professionals if we don't start getting identity built in from the beginning and getting that right. The great news is, and this is the great news, is that we can take so many of the lessons now that we're learning from workload identity, modern cloud native identity, which is bringing unique and universal identities, particularly things like SPIFFE, which is a cloud native standard. And we can apply those same things to AI agents because agents are workloads. And we've got emerging protocols like MCP, which will allow us to be able to authenticate those agents when they're doing work with each other or authenticating to things like application services or databases. So all great lessons that we learned and we can apply. We've got the capabilities.
We're talking about machine identities, obviously, and talking about it with you or hearing you talk about it, at least, it seems so clear and maybe not simple, but at least it's easy to wrap your head around it when you talk to Kevin Bocek about machine identities. Is there any particular misconception regarding machine identity that you hear a lot these days?
Well, so first of all, thank you, David. I am a student. I'm still learning. The one thing that, after I hear about something like an incident, like a certificate outage, or I hear an incident like an API key or access token being exposed on something like an S3 bucket, I always hear that's just one incident. And you know what? It's not a problem. But I think the big myth is that it's an isolated incident. There are not so many of these machine identities out there. Or you know what? We can apply a script or maybe a cloud provider is going to take care of the problem for us. I mean, I think those are the types of myth. Perfect example that I've seen. So, hey, cloud providers are providing more and more automation. But how do you know across all of your, say, for example, your Amazon instances, how do you know all of the API keys and access tokens that are in those Amazon secrets managers that workloads are using? How do you know all of the TLS certificates that are across all your EC2 instances? And maybe you're even using Amazon Certificate Manager across all the different regions that are your business. How would you know? And how could you even help if there were an incident in one of those Amazon Secrets Managers or in one of those Amazon Certificate Managers? These are the types of myths that I see. popping up. And it's not, anyone's fault. I mean, this is just, we're still, again, I say learning about the volume, the velocity, the variety of all these different machine identities, where they're being used, how they're used, the what, where, when, how, why. And this is just, again, taking us as security professionals, identity professionals, helping us explain it to CISO, to the application teams, to the platform teams, and bringing together now a cohesive identity security strategy. I mean, this is what Gartner has been helping to CISOs learn more about. What are those required capabilities? Having your secrets manager work with your certificate manager, having it work with your enterprise PKI, having your workload identity manager that's working with cloud native, work with your secrets manager and your PKI. This is then also too the capabilities that we're still learning about, and it's taking experts to help educate us, the architects, the CISOs, about actually what do we need. It's about the problem, but also how do we then go about solving it, getting the right architecture. So some of the myths, and I think the right thing is we're getting the learnings out there. And that's something too I'd recommend to the audience. If you are a Gartner client, just as for example, go and query machine identity or access one of your team members who does have access to get some of the research. You'll see great architecture designs to start to say, okay, how do I get controls around the problem, whether it's certificate outages or leaky API keys and access tokens.
It's a rapidly evolving landscape and story, that's for sure. And one of the things I think be interesting to do at the end here is to look into the crystal ball a little bit with you, Kevin. And as we move toward artificial general intelligence and quantum computing, what identity innovation should security leaders be prepared for?
Whoa, well, we didn't get to a post-quantum world, which is a world where quantum computers are rapidly evolving, and there is almost certain to be a time when they're able to break today's cryptography, which then makes all the things that we've come just to know about the digital world, whether that's, being able to pay online in a shop, whether it's our mobile device, even now being able to communicate, whatever service we're using is good or bad, not friend or foe across the internet. All of that could break. So that's a post-quantum world, which is then we have to be prepared for. Good news, and we can talk about it. We've got capabilities then, all things we've been talking about, getting discovery, intelligence, driving automation, but we're going to need to be prepared for that. And then when you think a world then that drives more and more, maybe even to AGI, so the speed of identity attacks is only going to grow. And I think then, from a machine identity perspective, because AI, it's a machine, it's operating machine speed. That's why we're going to have to get machine identity right. The front door just won't be, as in many cases it's been, the phishing attacks or the spam that's been coming in, then, lateral movement. No, it's actually AGI brings forward like full on cloud native machine attacks is that future world. So all things that we'll have to get prepared for. Good news, we got ways to get there.
Sounds like we've got many sequels to this story coming up, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Kevin. I know you're coming up, or I'm not going to be presumptive about when you go to bed, but it's got to be getting close to bedtime there in the UK. Am I relatively right with that prediction there?
As they used to say in the old advertisement, the city never sleeps.
Uh-huh.
So one thing though, I was a Dell intern, and anyone that spent time in Austin, like in July and August, basically I became like a vampire at night. It's just like you cannot get to sleep when it's like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or I think that's greater than 40 degrees Celsius. So I've learned to love and being up with teams all over the world. That's the one special thing now, because like the teams in Australia are waking up, and in Singapore too, and also my colleagues out there in Palo Alto. So this is fun. It's great to be here with you.
Really appreciate you coming onto the podcast, Kevin. You bring a lot of insight into machine identity and everything else in this world, and we appreciate your time very much. Look forward to talking with you again down the road.
See you guys next time. Thanks, David.
All right, there you have it. Thanks for listening to Security Matters. If you like this episode, please follow us wherever you do your podcast thing so you can catch new episodes as they drop. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We'd appreciate it very much, and so will the algorithmic wins. What else? Drop us a line with questions, comments, and if you're a cybersecurity professional and you have an idea for an episode, drop us a line. Our email address is securitymatterspodcast, all one word, @cyberark.com. We hope to see you next time.